Welcome to this custom deep dive. We've got a pretty ambitious mission today.
Yeah, we really do.
And it's tailored specifically for you. We are going to fundamentally upgrade how you interpret the world.
Right.
By mastering what's known as the causal mindset.
It's a huge shift.
It is. And to do this, we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of source material today. Primarily, we're anchoring this on Dr. Quentin Gallia's The Causal Mindset Handbook.
Which is excellent.
Plus, it features some really brilliant framing in the foreword by Kareem Arlakani from Harvard Business School.
Yeah, that foreword really sets the stage perfectly.
Exactly. Because if you think about it, every single decision you make, whether you're, allocating capital for a new business venture,
or just trying out a new diet.
Right. A new diet your friend swears by. It's all entirely predicated on an assumption of cause and effect. You execute X because you expect Y to happen.
You want a specific outcome.
But the underlying question we're exploring today is, what if the data you're basing those assumptions on is fundamentally misleading you?
And that is a profound structural problem in how we process information right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're living in this era defined by just massive data abundance and advanced predictive modeling.
We have so much data.
We do. But the core issue Gallia highlights is that data is essentially dumb without a causal framework applied to it.
Dumb data. I love that.
It really is. Data on its own has no inherent sense of cause and effect. It just sits there in a database, right? Showing us patterns and historical frequencies.
And without the right mindset to sort of interrogate those patterns.
Your perception of what the data means is deeply limited. And it's often heavily biased by your own assumptions.
Okay, to illustrate how easily data can be misinterpreted without that causal framework, the research points to a really visible example from the political sphere.
Right, the immigration data.
Yes. And before we get into the mechanics of this, I want to make it absolutely clear to you, the listener, that we are analyzing this purely from a data science perspective.
Strictly the numbers.
Exactly. We are impartially reporting on the content provided in the source material just to convey these concepts of data interpretation. We're not endorsing or criticizing any political figure.
It's just a highly visible case study.
Right. So the text highlights a statement made by Donald Trump, where he claimed that in his last week in office, illegal immigration numbers had reached their lowest point.
Which was factually true in terms of the raw count?
Yes, the natural implication of a statement like that is that specific border policies were the direct and sole cause of that statistical drop.
But when we impartially analyze a claim like that using a causal framework, we have to immediately look for the broader context.
What else is going on in the world?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What else might be influencing the numbers? Trump's presidency ended in January 2021.
Right.
That specific timeline coincided squarely with the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, right. The lockdowns.
A year of unprecedented global lockdowns, border closures, halted international travel. So if we look at the raw data, did the immigration numbers drop? Yes, the data definitively shows that.
But the causal question is different.
Exactly. The scientific question is what actually drove the change. Was it entirely political policy? Was it a global pandemic that physically restricted human movement? Or was it some complex combination of both?
Right. You can't just draw a straight line.
You really can't. In causal inference, a massive overlapping event like a global pandemic acts as a heavy confounder.
A confounder.
Yes. And the goal of this example isn't to litigate political effectiveness at all. It's to demonstrate to you how multiple massive variables just absolutely have to be carefully isolated before anyone in any field can claim a direct causal link.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that distinction is exactly the trap so many organizations fall into.
All the time.
So over the course of this deep dive, we're going to explore the crucial difference between merely predicting an outcome and actually causing it.
Which are two very different things.
Very different. We'll look at why implementing artificial intelligence can sometimes be a dangerously misleading tool for high-stakes decisions, and how to spot spurious correlations that drive terrible business strategies.
But we have to start with the psychology first.
Right. The psychological learning curve of causality. Gallia maps the journey of learning causal inference perfectly to the Dunning-Kruger curve.
It's such a great visualization.
It is. If you picture it, we all know that initial peak of Mount Stupid. That's when you first learn to run a basic regression analysis, and suddenly you think you can explain every trend in the market.
You feel invincible for about a week.
Exactly. But he argues the real work happens when you inevitably fall off that peak and plummet into the valley of despair.
And for data scientists or anyone dealing with analytics really, that fall into the valley of despair is usually triggered by the sudden realization of confounding variables.
Like the pandemic in the immigration example.
Exactly. You build a model, you think you have a perfect correlation, and then you realize there are a dozen hidden factors driving both the cause and the effect that you haven't accounted for.
It all just falls apart.
It does. You realize how incredibly difficult true causation is to prove in a complex, multivariable world. And what's really interesting is how Galea relates this to his own experience finishing his PhD in economics.
You'd think he'd come out of that feeling like a genius.
Right. You might assume the biggest takeaway from successfully defending a PhD would be mastery over some highly complex mathematical formulas.
But it wasn't.
No. He writes that his primary takeaway was humility. Statistics, at its absolute core, is the art of dealing with uncertainty.
Which completely flips the script on how we usually view expertise. I mean, we tend to want experts who give us absolute ironclad predictions.
We do crave that certainty, but when a true expert looks at a data set and says, it depends, or I'm not 100% sure, it rarely means they lack the knowledge.
Right.
It usually means they've climbed out of that valley of despair and are working their way up the slope of enlightenment. They truly understand the complexity of the world and the limitations of their own models.
So embracing that structural uncertainty, rather than hiding it behind confident but flawed predictions, that's the foundational step in developing a causal mindset.
Exactly. You have to embrace it.
That makes perfect sense. Because embracing the uncertainty forces you to look harder at the relationships between variables. Which brings us to the classic trap: correlation versus causation.
The usual suspects.
We hear the phrase all the time, but the source material really digs into spurious correlations. These are situations where two data sets move together almost perfectly on a graph, but have absolutely zero causal relationship in the physical world.
Right.
And the human brain's tendency toward apophenia, finding meaningful patterns in random noise, makes us highly susceptible to these.
Apophenia is a powerful cognitive blind spot. A classic, really accessible example in statistical literature is the relationship between ice cream sales and shark attacks.
I love this one.
It's so clear. If you simply chart the raw data, you will see a robust positive correlation. When ice cream sales spike, shark attacks spike.
So obviously ice cream is causing the sharks to attack.
Right. If you feed that raw data into a basic predictive algorithm without a causal model, the algorithm might literally recommend banning ice cream to save swimmers.
Because ridiculous.
Because we know there's a hidden variable, a confounder, driving both metrics independently. Sunny, hot weather,
right?
Heat drives people to buy ice cream, and it simultaneously drives more people into the ocean, which increases exposure to sharks.
It's easy to spot the absurdity there. Or in the even more bizarre example from the book, where there's a near-perfect statistical correlation between the number of people who drown by falling into a swimming pool each year and the number of films Nicolas Cage appears in during those same years.
That one is my favorite.
It's so funny because we can laugh at that. The lack of connection is obvious to us. But in complex business environments, those spurious correlations hide in plain sight.
They absolutely do.
So how do data scientists practically spot them before an executive makes $1 million mistake?
That is where the methodology gets critical. The book introduces a visual and mathematical tool called Directed Acyclic Graphs, or DAGs.
DAGs.
Yes. These allow us to visually map the directional flow of causality. It establishes the mathematical rules for isolating variables. Let's take a more realistic business example: the relationship between a candidate's education level and their future job performance.
Okay. Very common HR metric.
A standard correlation analysis might show a strong positive link. This leads an HR department to draw a direct line from a prestigious degree to high performance and subsequently restrict hiring only to top-tier university graduates.
But if we map that out using a DAG, we realize we're missing a massive piece of the puzzle.
Precisely. If we build a comprehensive causal graph, we have to introduce nodes for other variables. One major node would be cognitive capacity or intrinsic motivation.
Which is the confounder.
Exactly. That variable sits outside the direct path, but heavily influences both the likelihood of a person obtaining a high-level degree and their ability to perform exceptionally well in a job.
Right.
That confounder opens up what causal inference calls a backdoor path in the data. So the direct causal link between the piece of paper, the diploma itself, and the job output is much harder to isolate than the initial correlation suggests.
So how do you find the real value of the degree?
A data scientist has to mathematically block that backdoor path by controlling for cognitive capacity across the data set.
Got it. And the DARGs are also crucial for clearing up the often muddy boundaries between a confounder and a mediator.
Yes, that's another huge distinction.
The text uses an excellent example regarding environmental activists blocking major roads. If you look at it superficially, the direct effect of a roadblock is a massive traffic jam,
Hundreds of cars just idling.
which actually increases fossil fuel pollution in the short term. So it seems entirely counterproductive to their stated goals.
It does. But this is where mapping the indirect paths becomes vital. Unlike a confounder, which sits completely outside the primary relationship and influences both sides.
A mediator sits directly on the causal pathway.
Exactly. It's between your intervention and your desired outcome. In the activist example, the intervention is the roadblock. The intended final outcome is a reduction in long-term pollution. The mediator sitting in the middle of that path is environmental awareness or media attention.
Right.
The activists are betting that the roadblock will increase media attention, which will pressure policymakers, which will eventually lead to systemic changes that reduce overall pollution.
So the analytical challenge is weighing the immediate negative direct effect against the potential long-term indirect effects flowing through that mediator.
You simply cannot answer that question by looking at a two-dimensional spreadsheet of traffic emissions. You have to map the structural path.
That would draw the dig.
Exactly. And this brings us to what is arguably the most critical intersection of causal thinking today, artificial intelligence.
Yes. This is where it gets really high stakes. The book quotes the famous law of the instrument by Abraham Maslow. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
And right now, the corporate world is treating predictive AI as a universal hammer for every conceivable problem.
Which feels incredibly dangerous when we look at Karim Lakhani's distinction in the foreword. He notes that prediction allows us to see the world as it is, but causality allows us to change it.
That is the line. That's the whole ballgame.
We're essentially confusing our ability to passively observe a pattern with our ability to actively manipulate a system.
That is the core danger. Predictive AI, which encompasses tools like ChatGPT, advanced recommendation engines, traditional machine learning, it's masterfully designed to identify patterns in historical data.
Right.
It tells you what is highly likely to occur based on associations. Causal inference tells you what will occur if you actively intervene. If we confuse the two, the results can be catastrophic.
And the text outlines a really chilling medical example of this regarding sepsis.
Yes, a highly lethal bodily response to infection. If you feed patient data into a predictive machine learning model, it will correctly identify that a rapidly rising body temperature is an incredibly strong predictor of the onset of sepsis.
It's a great predictor. But if a doctor acts on that predictive output without a causal framework, they might make a fatal error.
They absolutely might. If the model flags the rising temperature and the doctor treats that prediction as the root cause by simply packing the patient in ice to lower their fever.
They're only treating the proxy.
Exactly. They are treating the predictor. They haven't done a single thing to address the underlying bacterial infection causing the systemic failure. The algorithm found a brilliant correlation, not a root cause. If you intervene on a correlation alone, assuming it acts as a lever, the patient could die.
That distinction between a proxy and a lever is fascinating, and we see that error constantly in mainstream health reporting too.
Oh, all the time.
The text mentions a CNN article that claimed grip strength was a key to longevity. The article went so far as to recommend that readers start doing daily hand grip exercises so they could live longer.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of the data. Grip strength is a fantastic, easily measurable proxy for overall cardiovascular health, neurological function, and physical vitality.
People who are generally robust tend to have strong grips.
And they live longer. But the grip strength is the indicator, not the lever. Squeezing a stress ball for 20 minutes a day to improve your grip is not going to magically clear your arteries or extend your lifespan to 100.
It's totally backwards.
It is the equivalent of holding an ice cube to a thermometer and declaring that you've cured global warming.
That is such a good way to put it. But if predictive algorithms can be that easily misinterpreted when dealing with human health, it makes me wonder if companies are shooting themselves in the foot by adopting these tools so rapidly for internal decision-making.
That's the big question right now.
Is there a way to safely integrate predictive AI, or does the human-in-the-loop dynamic inevitably fail?
What's fascinating here is that Fabrizio Dell'Acqua explored this exact question in a Harvard Business School study cited in the book. He looked at HR recruiters who were given AI tools to help evaluate candidate resumes.
Okay.
They ran a rigorous field experiment where some recruiters were given no AI assistance, while others were given varying qualities of AI, some highly accurate, some intentionally flawed.
And the results were completely counterintuitive to the tech industry's narrative.
Completely.
Providing recruiters with the highest quality, most accurate AI assistance actually led to worse joint outputs in the final hiring recommendations.
It did. The better the AI performed in a vacuum, the worse the final human plus AI result became.
That's crazy. Why?
Because it forces us to look at the causal impact of the intervention itself. Why did performance degrade? Because the introduction of the tool structurally changed human behavior.
Oh, interesting.
The researchers tracked the granular effort of the recruiters, how much time they spent on each resume, how many distinct sections of the document they actively clicked on and read. When the AI was highly accurate, the human recruiters engaged in cognitive offloading.
They just got lazy.
They essentially fell asleep at the wheel. They assumed the machine was infallible, stopped doing their own rigorous checks, and relied far too heavily on the algorithmic output, missing nuances the AI wasn't trained to catch.
So an algorithm might have a 95% predictive accuracy rate in a sterile laboratory environment. But the causal impact of dropping that exact same algorithm into a chaotic, real-world human workflow might be a net negative on overall productivity.
Yes. You have to measure the impact of the tool as an active intervention, not just a passive observer.
Precisely. And that realization requires us to apply this causal mindset not just to corporate AI rollouts, but to our daily lives.
It applies everywhere.
One of the central tenets Galea drives home is that reality is almost always multifactorial. Very rarely does a single, isolated variable cause a complex outcome.
Which is hard for our brains to accept.
It is. Let's bring this down to a highly relatable scenario from the text.
Yeah.
The book walks through a hypothetical coffee break conversation between two coworkers, Trent and Mila.
The cold shower guy.
The cold shower guy.
Right.
So Trent is raving about his new biohacking routine. He's been taking freezing cold showers every morning for a month, and he claims it has completely supercharged his immune system.
He says he's never felt more energetic.
Right. But the irony is that Trent is actively sniffling and sneezing throughout this entire conversation.
It is a brilliant illustration of how our internal biases distort causal reality. Trent is demonstrating severe confirmation bias. He wants the discomfort of the cold showers to be worth it.
Nobody wants to freeze for nothing.
Exactly. So he selectively attributes his general feelings of morning adrenaline to a boosted immune system while completely ignoring the glaring physical evidence that he is currently battling a head cold. Mila, listening to this, is rightfully skeptical.
But Trent defends his stance by saying that everyone online is talking about the massive health benefits of cold plunges.
Which introduces availability bias.
Right.
The most vocal, passionate people on social media are the ones who experienced a perceived benefit or who have a financial incentive to promote the lifestyle.
The survivors, basically.
Exactly. The thousands of people who tried a cold shower, hated it, and caught a flu a week later are not making viral videos about their experience. If we help Trent build a causal graph for his situation, we have to map the confounders.
Like what?
Well, for instance, what is the seasonality? Seasonality affects both the likelihood of enduring a cold shower, which is much harder in the dead of winter, and the baseline probability of catching a rhinovirus.
It totally reminds me of a time I tried rigorously tracking my own productivity using a time management app. After a month, I found a near-perfect negative correlation between the days I drank 3 or more cups of coffee and the days I actually completed my major tasks.
Oh, wow.
I immediately assumed the caffeine was overstimulating me and ruining my focus. But when I mapped it out, the massive confounder was a lack of sleep.
Ah, there it is.
On nights I slept terribly, I drank way more coffee the next day to compensate, and my productivity was destroyed because I was exhausted. Not because of the coffee. The coffee was a mediator of the exhaustion, not the root cause of the distraction.
That is a perfect real-world application. And furthermore, someone who willingly subjects themselves to daily cold showers, like Trent, likely possesses a baseline of other health-conscious behaviors.
Oh, true.
They probably prioritize sleep, exercise regularly, and monitor their diet. So the analytical question becomes, are the cold showers actively causing the perceived health benefits, or are those other underlying healthy behaviors confounding the result, making the cool shower entirely incidental?
Everything is multifactorial.
Yeah.
So if prediction without causation is dangerous and everyday observation is riddled with bias, what does this mean for businesses that need to scale? Do companies just abandon predictive AI entirely?
Not at all. The ultimate analytical power combo is marrying predictive modeling with causal inference.
The power combo.
Yes. The book highlights a fantastic example from the global retailer M&S. Like most major retailers, they have massive data sets and use predictive AI to find patterns. They can predict with high accuracy exactly which customers are most likely to open a promotional email or who is most likely to purchase a specific product category this quarter.
Because machine learning is unparalleled at targeting and segmenting those audiences.
Exactly. The AI acts as a highly efficient targeting mechanism. But if M&S stopped there, they would waste millions of dollars.
How so?
If they just send a 20% discount code to the customers the AI predicts are highly likely to buy, they are giving away margin to sure things, people who are going to pay full price anyway.
Oh, that makes sense.
So they apply causal inference, specifically a technique often called uplift modeling. They want to measure the counterfactual. What would the specific customer have done if we didn't send the email?
They're trying to isolate the causal effect of the email itself.
Yes. Causal mapping divides the customer base into distinct quadrants. You have the sure things who buy regardless. You have the lost causes who won't buy no matter what you send.
Right.
You have the sleeping dogs who might actually be annoyed by an email and unsubscribe. And finally, you have the persuadables.
The persuadables.
The persuadables are the only group where the intervention, the marketing email, actually causes a change in behavior from non-buyer to buyer. Prediction finds the target. Causation ensures the intervention actually shifts the outcome. That is how a company unlocks true, measurable return on investment.
That is brilliant. So to summarize our journey through the source material today, we've climbed Mount Stupid, plummeted into the valley of despair, and hopefully we are starting to walk up the slope of enlightenment toward a robust causal mindset.
I hope so.
The beauty of this is that you do not need a PhD in econometrics to apply it. You just need to develop the habit of pausing, looking at a compelling claim, and asking yourself, are there hidden variables here? What else could be causing this?
That is the exact mindset shift required. Be relentlessly curious and structurally skeptical. Question everything, even peer-reviewed scientific research. As Galea suggests, simply pay close attention to the specific wording used in a study or a news article.
Yeah.
Does the author claim a statistical association, or are they claiming a true causal link? Merely recognizing that difference will save you from falling victim to data misinformation, flawed business strategies, and useless health fads.
It is a powerful filter for navigating the modern world. And to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own. We are living in an era where algorithmic systems are becoming incredibly cheap, frictionless, and ubiquitous.
They're everywhere.
They're quietly taking over millions of micro decisions every single day in corporate hiring, in financial lending, and in hospital triage. We are actively outsourcing our institutional judgment to machines that fundamentally only understand mathematical correlation, not physical causation. If we as a society do not aggressively demand causal reasoning from the algorithms we deploy, are we quietly hardwiring historical biases and spurious correlations into the very foundation of our future infrastructure? Think about that the next time a machine confidently tells you what to do. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.